Carl Newton Mahan was born in 1922 in Paintsville, Johnson County, Kentucky. He lived with his parents, John and Cora Mahan, in a small, simple house. His father worked as a taxi driver. The family didn't have much money, which was common in the coal mining areas of Kentucky at the time. Carl was still too young to attend school when everything happened. On May 18, 1929, Carl was out with his friend, 8-year-old Cecil Van Hoos. The two boys were collecting scrap metal. They planned to sell it to earn a little extra cash. While they were searching, Carl found a piece of scrap iron. Cecil took it from him and hit him. Carl got upset and ran home. He climbed up on a chair and grabbed his father's 12-gauge shotgun. He then walked back to where Cecil was. According to reports, Carl shouted, "I'm going to shoot you." Then he pulled the trigger. Cecil was hit in the chest. He tried to run but collapsed. A neighbor named Mrs. Manuel Fitzpatrick saw what happened. She rushed to help Cecil and took him to the hospital. Sadly, Cecil passed away shortly after arriving. Carl was taken into custody and faced charges for what had happened. His trial began just 5 days later, on May 23, 1929. In court, Carl didn't seem to fully understand the seriousness of the situation. He was seen laughing and playing with his friends during the breaks. He told the court that he didn't know the gun was loaded. After a short discussion, the jury found him responsible for the incident and gave a verdict of manslaughter. Judge John W. Butcher sentenced Carl to 15 years at the Greendale Reformatory. He was supposed to stay there until he turned 21. The idea of sending a 6-year-old to a reformatory shocked many people. Across the country, there was strong criticism. People believed the system had failed to consider Carl's young age and lack of understanding. Well-known attorney Clarence Darrow even spoke out against the decision. He said that if a child so young could be judged like this, the same could be done to animals next. Because of the public outrage, the case was appealed. Judge J.F. Bailey stepped in and blocked Carl's transfer to the reformatory. After that, the case was dropped. Carl was released and sent home to live with his parents. Following the trial, the family moved to Louisville, Kentucky. Carl grew up and later got married. He tried to live a normal life, but life continued to be difficult. In 1942, his younger brother James accidentally drowned, which deeply affected the family. On April 18, 1958, Carl passed away at the age of 35. He took his own life. He is buried with his family in Evergreen Cemetery. But what led a 12-year-old boy and his 13-year-old sister to step so far beyond the line, together? Curtis Fairchild Jones was born in 1986 in Alabama, United States. He grew up with his older sister, Catherine Jones. Their home life was unstable. Later reports said they suffered unwanted intimate contact at the hands of a male relative who lived with them. That relative had been convicted in 1993 for similar harm against his girlfriend's daughter. Child Welfare Services investigated several times, most recently just 4 months before the fatal event, but no one removed the children from that setting. Curtis even shared a room with this relative. On January 6, 1999, in Port St. John, Florida, the two siblings carried out a plan they had been discussing for some time. Curtis was 12 and Catherine was 13. They took their father's 9mm semi-automatic handgun. They shot Sonia Nicole Spites, their father's 29-year-old partner. She was working on a jigsaw puzzle in the dining room when they fired 4 shots. This act ended her life. Afterward, they moved her body to the bathroom and tried to remove red stains with bleach. Then they ran to a friend's house and said the shooting was an accident. When that friend grew suspicious, the siblings hid in nearby woods. Authorities found them there the next morning. Their motive was complex. They said they faced ongoing intimate harm from the relative. They felt unprotected by both their father and his partner. At first, they planned to harm the relative, their father, and his partner. But when the relative wasn't there, they acted only against the partner. The children were charged with first-degree homicide and tried as adults. They were the youngest in the United States ever to face an adult trial in such a case at that time. They faced the possibility of life in prison. Eventually, both accepted a plea deal. They pleaded guilty to second-degree homicide. Each received an 18-year prison sentence plus lifetime probation. Curtis served his time at South Bay Correctional Facility in Florida. He was released on July 28, 2015, after serving 16 years. During his time inside, he became an ordained minister. After his release, he faced the challenge of rejoining a society that had changed in many ways. He had to relearn basic skills, including how to use modern technology and manage daily routines. The next boy was just 12, his brother 13, the victim, their father. On November 26, 2001, something deeply disturbing happened in Cantonment, Florida. Two young brothers, 12-year-old Alex King and his 13-year-old brother Derek, were involved in an act that left many struggling to understand how it happened. While their father, Terry King, was sleeping, they hit him several times with an aluminum baseball bat. Afterward, they set the house on fire, hoping to hide what had happened. Terry King was 40 years old. He was a single father raising his sons on his own. Their mother, Kelly Marino, had left the family back in 1995. The boys had not had an easy life. Derek spent about 6 years in foster care before moving back in with his dad and brother just 7 weeks before the incident. Alex had stayed with Terry the whole time. The family had their struggles. Money was tight, and the emotional connection between them wasn't strong. It wasn't a happy or stable home. In the early morning hours of that day, Derek went into his father's bedroom and used the baseball bat while his father was still asleep. Alex later admitted that he had encouraged his brother to go through with it. After it happened, they set their house on fire to destroy anything that could point to them. Then they went to the home of a man named Ricky Chavis. He was a 40-year-old family friend. Chavis had previously been convicted of offenses related to minors. At first, the brothers said they acted on their own. They claimed they were trying to escape emotional mistreatment from their father. But later, their story changed. They said Ricky Chavis had played a big role in convincing them to do it. He had told them that they would be better off living with him. Alex also shared in court that Chavis had made him believe they were in a relationship, and that Chavis had told him he was gay. This raised a serious question. Was Chavis the one truly behind the whole thing? There wasn't enough evidence to charge Chavis with the act itself. But the court did find him guilty of helping the boys afterward and for keeping them at his house without telling anyone. The case was complicated. The prosecution took the unusual approach of charging both the King brothers and Chavis for the same incident, but with different stories about what really happened. In the end, Chavis was cleared of the main charge. The brothers were found guilty of second-degree charges and for setting the fire, but the judge later overturned that decision because of problems in the trial. Eventually, the boys agreed to a plea deal. They both admitted to third-degree charges and to starting the fire. Derek got 8 years. Alex got 7. Since they were so young, they were moved from adult prisons to juvenile centers. Alex was released on April 9, 2008, after serving 6 years. Derek was released on March 7, 2009, after serving 7 years. After getting out, life wasn't easy for them. Alex ran into trouble again in 2011 when he violated his parole after being involved in a car crash and leaving the scene. Sadly, Alex passed away from a substance-related incident in Montana on April 23, 2024. He was 35 years old. The next man carried secrets across 4 states. His victims? Women who reminded him of one person, his mother. Carol Edward Cole was born on May 9, 1938, in Sioux City, Iowa. He was the second son of Laverne and Vesta Cole. Not long after he was born, the family moved to California. His father found work in a shipyard there. During World War II, Laverne went off to serve in the military. This left Vesta in charge of the home. While he was away, Vesta started spending time with other men. She often took young Carol along and forced him to stay quiet about it. She also dressed him as a girl, which made him the target of teasing and bullying from other kids. These early experiences left a strong impact on him. When Carol was just 8 years old, something tragic happened. He pushed a classmate named Dwayne into a lake in Richmond, California. The boy didn't survive. At the time, it was believed to be an accident. But years later, Carol admitted that he had done it on purpose. He said he was angry and wanted to take it out on someone because of the way his mother had treated him. As he got older, Carroll started to act out. In his teenage years, he was often in trouble for stealing and public intoxication. He eventually joined the U.S. Army, but in 1958, he was let go for taking firearms that didn't belong to him. In 1960, Carroll approached two parked couples in what was known as a lover's lane and tried to harm them. Shortly after, he told Richmond police he was having strong urges to harm women in a way that involved cutting off their ability to breathe. Between 1971 and 1980, Carroll committed a series of harmful acts in different states, including California, Texas, Oklahoma, and Nevada. He mainly targeted women. Most of the time, he would meet them at bars. After spending time with them, he used force to stop them from breathing. In some cases, he kept their bodies for days and continued disturbing behavior after they had passed. In one case in Oklahoma City, he went even further. He cut apart the body of a woman and threw the pieces in trash bins around the city. Carroll later explained that he saw these women as reminders of his mother, and he felt like he was getting revenge through them. Many of his victims were women he had met while drinking or socializing in bars. Carroll was taken into custody on November 30th, 1980. By April 1981, he had been found guilty of 3 of these acts in Texas and was given a life sentence. In 1984, after his mother passed away, he agreed to face new charges in Nevada. He was later found guilty of 2 more cases there, which had happened in 1977 and 1979. This time, he received capital punishment. He spent his final years at the Nevada State Prison in Carson City. During that time, he became a Catholic and was baptized on the day his sentence was scheduled. He chose not to fight the ruling, saying, "I know I'll do it again if I ever leave prison. I'm a danger to society." On December 6, 1985, Carroll's sentence was carried out using an injection. He was the first person in Nevada to go through this method. His last meal included jumbo shrimp, French fries, a tossed salad with French dressing, and Boston clam chowder. Afterward, his brain was removed so scientists could study it and try to understand why he had acted the way he did. But what happens when childhood friendship turns into something unthinkable? On February 15, 2003, in Ephrata, Washington, 13-year-old Craig Sorger lost his life at the hands of 2 12-year-old friends, Evan Savoy and Jake Eakin. Craig had autism and was a special education student. Evan was a popular student and class clown, but he had a history of picking on younger or less popular kids. Jake had speech difficulty and was often picked on himself. Both boys were in special education classes and had learning challenges. They'd been friends since they were 2 years old. The boys invited him to play at Oasis Park. While there, Savoy dropped a rock on Craig's neck, knocking him down. He then struck Craig many times. Eakin joined in by striking Craig with a tree branch. The autopsy showed Craig had 34 stab wounds in the head and neck area, 5 in the chest and torso, and at least 20 injuries from blunt force. When Craig's body was found, police questioned both boys. Their stories didn't match, and red stains were on their clothes. 3 days later, they were arrested and held at the Grant County Youth Services Detention Center. Despite being only 12, each was charged in adult court, making them the youngest to face adult charges in Washington state since 1931. As part of a plea deal, Jake admitted his role in Craig's passing and agreed to testify against Evan. He was sentenced to more than 14 years in prison. Evan always said he was innocent. Still, with Jake's testimony and other evidence, a jury found Evan guilty of first-degree charges for taking Craig's life. He received a sentence of over 26 years. In 2011, Evan's conviction was overturned because parts of his trial were held behind closed doors. In 2013, he pleaded guilty to a second-degree charge and was sentenced to 20 years. Jake was released in February 2017. He now lives in Greenville, South Carolina, where he works as an anti-abortion activist. He is married and has 2 daughters. Evan was released in February 2023. He lives in Portland, Oregon, with his wife and daughter. But what drives a 10-year-old to bring a gun to school and forever change a community? James Osmondson was born in 1983 in Butte, Montana. Both of his parents had AIDS. They passed away when James was still very young. After that, James grew up in a single-parent household. He struggled with emotional, and social problems. Being so young and losing both parents left him feeling alone and overwhelmed. These struggles would later play a major role in his actions. On April 12, 1994, James was just 10 years old. That day, he brought a .22 caliber handgun to Margaret Leary Elementary School in Butte. According to reports, he had been bullied by classmates because of his parents' illness. He wanted to scare or possibly hurt the classmate who had been teasing him. But when he pulled the trigger, the bullet missed the intended student. Instead, it hit 11-year-old Jeremy Bullock in the chest. Jeremy was another student, and also the nephew of then-Governor Steve Bullock. Jeremy did not survive the injury. The incident happened during recess. Students were outside at the time without close supervision. The shooting shocked the entire community. It also raised awareness about how serious bullying can be and why kids need better mental health support. James's actions were likely caused by a mix of trauma, bullying, and not getting the help he needed. He had lost both parents at a young age, and he didn't have enough emotional support. This led to a breaking point. While James did not mean to hurt Jeremy specifically, what happened showed how badly things can go when kids are left to deal with pain on their own. After the incident, James was taken into custody. Because he was only 10 years old, he wasn't tried in adult court. Instead, the court sent him to a private treatment center. There, he received counseling and care. The legal system believed he still had a chance to turn his life around if given the right support. Years later, in 2016, James, who had changed his name by then, was found guilty of having illegal material involving minors on his computer. He was placed on probation. This raised more questions about how childhood trauma affects people in the long run. It also made some people question whether the treatment he received as a child was enough. Because James was a child when the shooting happened, and because his later case did not involve a sentence with life-ending consequences, there are no details like last words or a final meal tied to his name. James Osmundson's story is a difficult one. It shows how early trauma, bullying, and lack of support can lead to tragic outcomes. It's also a reminder of how important it is to step in early, especially when kids are struggling with pain that they don't know how to handle. Next, meet another 10-year-old whose home held a secret and ended in tragedy. Joseph McVeigh was a 10-year-old boy living in Big Prairie, Ohio. He lived with his 46-year-old mother, Deborah McVeigh, and his 15-year-old sister. Their home was a simple one, a converted two-car garage. There isn't much known about Joseph's father. It's also unclear what his day-to-day life was like. Details about the family's situation and relationships haven't been widely shared. However, it was reported that Joseph had access to weapons inside the home. On the evening of January 2nd, 2011, something very serious happened at the McVeigh home. Authorities said that Joseph got into an argument with his mother. Some reports suggest it may have been over chores, like bringing firewood into the house. At some point, the disagreement got worse. Joseph reportedly went to his bedroom, picked up a .22 caliber rifle, and used it to harm his mother. After this, he walked to a neighbor's house. There, he told them what had happened. He said, "I shot my mom." When deputies arrived at the house, they found that Deborah had lost her life. Joseph was immediately taken into custody. Since he was only 10 years old, he wasn't charged the same way an adult would be. Instead, under Ohio law, he was charged with delinquency by reason of committing a serious act. This is a legal way to handle cases involving children in such situations. There were discussions about possibly labeling him a serious youth offender. If that had happened, it could have led to a longer time in detention, possibly until he turned 21. But the public was not given full access to the trial details, final decision, or any sentencing outcomes. To this day, no one knows exactly why Joseph did what he did. While some believe the argument over chores played a role, it's likely there were other things going on. Emotional stress, family issues, and the fact that he had access to a gun may have all been factors. But without clear evidence, it's hard to say for sure. After the incident, Joseph was sent to a juvenile detention center. Officials looked into different options to help him, including the possibility of treatment in a specialized facility. This case brought up many questions. People talked about how the legal system should handle young children in serious situations. Others raised concerns about mental health, parenting, and how much influence a home environment can have on kids. Now consider the 10-year-old whose upbringing in a home of hate led him down a tragic path. Joseph Hall was born on June 19, 2000. His parents were Letitia Neal and Jeffrey Hall. From the beginning, Joseph's life was very unstable. When his parents separated, Joseph and his siblings were taken out of their mother's care. They went to live with their grandmother. This happened because there were concerns about how their mother was living. In 2004, Joseph was sent back to live with his father, Jeffrey. Jeffrey Hall was a known leader in a group that promoted hateful beliefs. His involvement in this group had a strong effect on how Joseph was raised. Joseph's stepmother, Krista McCary, also lived in the house. She had 3 kids from a previous relationship. The family lived in Riverside, California. The children, including Joseph, were homeschooled under a charter school program. From a young age, Joseph showed signs of serious behavioral issues. He would often have angry outbursts. He had been removed from multiple schools for these behaviors. Doctors later said Joseph had ADH. His learning level was also found to be below average. On May 1, 2011, something very serious happened. Around 4 in the morning, Joseph picked up a .22 caliber revolver from his father's bedroom. He then used it while his father was sleeping on the living room couch. Later, when the police spoke with Joseph, he explained why he did it. He said he had enough of the way his father treated people in the house. He talked about the yelling, the hitting, and how his father would cheat on Krista. Joseph also mentioned a TV show he had seen. In that show, a boy did something similar and didn't face consequences. That made an impact on Joseph's thinking. What Joseph did wasn't a quick decision. It came after years of being around violence and hateful beliefs. His father had taken him to armed border patrols. He taught Joseph how to use weapons from a young age. These experiences shaped how Joseph saw the world. Joseph was taken to court. He was charged with a serious offense. His lawyers said his developmental issues and the harmful environment he grew up in needed to be considered. In 2013, the court found him responsible and gave him a 10-year sentence in a juvenile facility. Because he was young, he would be allowed to leave when he turned 23. This case led to many discussions. People debated how the justice system should treat children in such situations. Others talked about how dangerous beliefs and bad home situations affect kids' minds. Some experts said Joseph might not have fully understood what he was doing, given his challenges. Krista McCary, the stepmother, also faced legal trouble. She was charged for putting children at risk and for keeping a loaded gun in a place where the kids could reach it. Investigators looked closely at her role in the home and what she knew about what was going on. The next 11-year-old risked his entire future, just for a simple watch. Anton Wood was born in 1881 in Brighton, Colorado. Not much is known about his early years, but he grew up in a working-class family. There were no signs that he had a difficult childhood. His parents worked regular jobs, and he went to the local school like most kids in the area. On November 2nd, 1892, something serious happened. Anton, who was just 11 years old at the time, led a 48-year-old businessman named Joseph Smith to a quiet spot often used for hunting not far from Brighton. Smith had recently shown off a gold watch that caught Anton's attention. Once they were alone, Anton pulled out a gun and shot Smith from behind. Smith didn't survive. After that, Anton took the watch and quickly left the area. Smith's body was found the next day. When people realized what had happened, everyone was shocked. Investigators figured out that Anton's main reason for doing this was to take Smith's watch, and maybe some other things he had. It seemed like Anton had made a plan to do this, thinking that if no one saw what happened, he could get away with it. During the investigation and trial, he didn't show much emotion or regret, which made many believe he knew what he was doing from the start. Anton's trial started in early 1893. The people in charge of the case shared evidence showing that Anton had carefully led Smith to that quiet spot and had carried out the act without warning. His defense team tried to explain that he was too young to fully understand what he was doing. After 16 hours of discussion, the jury decided on March 24, 1893, that Anton was guilty of a serious act that wasn't planned to the highest degree, but still very serious. He was given a sentence of 25 years to life in prison. When the decision was announced, Anton didn't react. He quietly left the courtroom without causing any trouble. Next, you'll see another 11-year-old whose life of hardship in Michigan ended with a rifle and a life lost. Nathaniel Abraham was born on January 19, 1986 in Michigan. He grew up in the city of Pontiac, where many families were going through hard times. His childhood was unstable. His mother was raising him alone and struggled to provide a steady home life. He didn't have a father figure around, and he was surrounded by a neighborhood where conflict and danger were common. These things had an effect on how he developed. On October 29, 1997, something tragic happened. Nathaniel, who was only 11 years old at the time, was involved in a shooting that led to the loss of life of an 18-year-old named Ronnie Green Jr. It happened in Pontiac, Michigan. The case shocked many people because of how young Nathaniel was. During the investigation, the prosecution brought up several concerns. They said Nathaniel had told others that he wanted to hurt someone, using words like, "I'm going to shoot somebody." They also revealed that he had taken a rifle without permission and practiced using it by aiming at balloons. Because of these actions, they argued that what happened wasn't just a sudden mistake, but something he had thought about in advance. The case drew attention across the country. Nathaniel was first charged with the most serious level of wrongdoing. But since he was so young, the court had to decide whether it was right to hold a child fully responsible for something that serious. His defense team said that his age and mental development needed to be taken into account. Eventually, the court found Nathaniel responsible at a lower level. He was convicted of a charge that still carried serious consequences, but was considered less severe. Judge Eugene Arthur Moore decided not to sentence Nathaniel as an adult. Instead, he was sent to a secure youth facility, where he would stay until he turned 21. The judge believed it was more important to focus on helping him grow and change than just punishment. While in detention, Nathaniel tried to turn things around. He studied and earned his GED. He even began taking some college classes. But it wasn't an easy path. He struggled with managing his anger and had problems getting along with people in authority. His time there showed how complex it is to help young people who have been through trauma and made serious mistakes. As of the latest information, Nathaniel is being held at the Ernest C. Brooks Correctional Facility in Michigan. The earliest date he could be released is February 28, 2025. If he serves the full sentence, his final release would be on February 28, 2059. Since his original case, he has faced more legal trouble, including being involved in situations with police and cases connected to illegal substances. On March 24, 1998, the quiet town of Jonesboro, Arkansas, went through something that would leave a lasting mark. Two young boys, 11-year-old Andrew Golden and 13-year-old Mitchell Johnson, brought weapons to Westside Middle School and opened fire on students and staff. They pulled a fire alarm during school hours, causing students and teachers to leave their classrooms and gather outside. As everyone stood together, unaware of what was coming, the two boys began shooting from a hidden spot. 4 students and 1 teacher lost their lives that day. 10 others were hurt. The whole thing happened in just a few minutes, but it left the town shocked and heartbroken. Who were Andrew Golden and Mitchell Johnson? Andrew Golden was born on May 25, 1986 in Jonesboro. He came from a family that seemed typical from the outside. There wasn't anything in his early life that pointed to what would later happen. Mitchell Johnson, born on December 27, 1984, also grew up in Jonesboro. Like Golden, his background didn't show any obvious signs that something like this could take place. Why did it happen? No one knows for sure what made them do it. Some people believe they were treated badly at school. Others think they had an unhealthy interest in weapons and aggressive behavior. What is known is that the two boys got access to several guns. They took them from Golden's grandfather's home. That access, combined with whatever personal issues they were dealing with, led to a very serious and harmful outcome. After the incident, both boys were taken into custody. They were charged with several counts related to loss of life and harm to others. Since they were underage at the time, their cases followed different legal rules, compared to adults. The situation got national attention. Many people started debating how the law should handle very young people who carry out extreme acts. In court, their lawyers said the boys were too young to fully understand what they were doing. The prosecutors disagreed. They argued that the act was too serious to ignore and that it deserved a strong legal response. In the end, both were found responsible and sent to a juvenile detention center. Because of their ages, they could only be held until they turned 21. Andrew Golden was released after serving a little over 9 years. Mitchell Johnson served a similar amount of time. Once out, they faced the difficult task of returning to everyday life. The public had mixed feelings. Some people felt they deserved another chance. Others thought the seriousness of their actions should have meant they stayed locked up for much longer. Since they were minors, they couldn't face the most severe punishment under the law. That meant there was no final meal, no last words, and none of the things that are often talked about in such cases. Their story continues to be a difficult one for many to talk about. It raises tough questions about how to deal with serious actions committed by children and whether young people can truly change after something like this. Even though the last case happened in Australia, it's one that has to be told. Robert Robertson was born in 1990 in Forest, a small town in Tasmania, Australia. There isn't much public information about his family, but it's known that he had a younger brother who was just 2 years old. Robert didn't have a stable or closely supervised childhood. He was often left alone and may have spent time in environments that weren't supportive or healthy for a growing child. By the time he was 7, Robert was regularly given the responsibility of watching over his toddler brother. That's a huge task for any child, and in 1997, something happened that deeply shocked everyone around him. While he was babysitting, Robert hurt his younger brother by hitting him with a piece of wood. The injuries were serious, and his brother passed away. The exact reason behind Robert's actions is still unclear, but experts believe it may have been a mix of emotional stress, being too young to fully understand what he was doing, and possibly having some underlying mental health challenges. Since Robert was only 7 at the time, the legal system had to handle the situation differently. In Australia, kids under the age of 10 aren't held legally responsible in the same way adults or older children are. That means Robert couldn't be taken to court or face criminal charges. Instead, the authorities placed him in the care of the state. From there, the focus turned toward helping him, rather than punishing him. He was given access to therapy and psychological support. Professionals worked with him to understand what had happened and why. They helped him build emotional awareness, learn how to manage stress, and process any past trauma. The main goal was to help Robert recover and eventually become someone who could live a safe and healthy life in the community. So how does the law treat situations like this? In Australia, children under 10 are considered too young to truly understand the difference between right and wrong. Because of this, the law doesn't treat them like older kids or adults. Instead, their cases go through child protection systems. The focus is on support, guidance, and rehabilitation, not punishment. Coming up is an 8-year-old whose first unthinkable act marked the start of a path ending in capital punishment.